Good morning and welcome to Hardin County Commissioners Court. It's 9 a.m. Today is Thursday, July the 23rd, and we're here for a special meeting, a budget workshop. If everybody will please rise, and Commissioner Kirkendall will lead us in the invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for the privilege and honor of the offices that we were elected to. Father, we pray for your wisdom and guidance, Lord, as we consider a budget going forward for next year. Lord, we thank you for all you've done, and Lord, pray for our families today, God, that you watch over all the families of the employees for Hardin County. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 4, budget workshop to review and discuss the past, present, and future budget needs and concerns for the following departments. Before we begin, we've gotten our certified appraisal from the tax office, which was submitted to Ms. Stevens by the appraisal chief, Mr. Stevens. And I know that Angela has been diligently working on getting all of our updated information for us. Do you have that ready to hand out and go over?
I do.
Before we start talking about any further expenses, I think it'd be best if we see where we're at on our revenue. And now that we have updated information, that's where I thought we'd start, if everybody's in agreement with that. Okay.
Are they the same?
Yes, sir.
The appraisal district presented these appraised values as of July the 17th, 2015. The estimated net taxable value and the estimated rolling stock values, the total was $2,852,518,762. And multiply that by our 56-cent current tax rate, it gives you $15,974,105.07. Our estimated frozen tax loss is $305,488.80. So the total of that would be $15,668,616.27. Our estimated budget revenue from last year was $15,746,562. And the difference now is $77,945.73.
So if everybody will recall, we've been using a figure of negative 628,000, give or take. That's what we've had since we received our estimated appraised values from the appraisal district back in April. That figure has now changed to a negative $77,945.73. I had also asked Angela to give the information on the bottom right. Everybody can just review that for themselves, and if anyone has any questions, we can discuss it further. But that is information that I thought all the courts should have for today, just in case they had any questions about it. Does anybody have any questions regarding this sheet before we proceed?
If you give me just 1 second.
While you're looking at that, I just want to ask Angela, I had talked to her about it yesterday evening. We have another line item in our on the sheet in our budget that's titled Hardin County Tax Rate and Tax Revenue Calculation. There's a line item in here that states estimated budgeted additional revenue, and she states that it looks like we're on track for the amount that was budgeted, the $3.9 million figure, that we are on track for that this year. So that's just, we're talking about the current budget when I talk about that number. We really don't have an estimate for next year. It's the additional revenue that's anything other than the ad valorem tax revenue that we receive.
On
Do you
this,
have anything you want to discuss on that,
We
or?
will have that additional page next week.
Right.
on this right hand side box where you have the 305, 488, 80.
Yes, sir.
All right, it goes to 15,953,868. Is that number different?
All that was changed here is this,
57 cents.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay,
to show what the bottom dollar would be.
I'm with you.
Changes it from negative 77 to 207.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay.
So in this right-hand column over here for the appraised values, if I'm not mistaken, the three values that changed were the estimated net taxable value and the rolling stock, and then the estimated frozen tax loss. That's all updated figures. Those are probably not gonna change again. Those should be final. Is that correct?
Other than, Shirley Stevens is on the phone right now with the appraisal district about the rolling stock. Other than that,
So there's a question about that. So
Correct.
if that changes, then we might even find out before the end of the meeting.
correct.
All right, does anybody have anything else regarding this information?
Sure, they're working on an effective tax rate calculation.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And she's gonna come provide that to us as well.
That's good.
All right. We'll move on to item 4A, the 88th District Judge. I believe everyone's got a copy, plus Judge Stover had sent this out to every commissioner as well. Basically, he asked that his budget stay the same, but as I recall, he did ask that we consider, he has a court coordinator that is paid, a percentage of her salary is paid by Tyler County, but she does not ever actually travel to Tyler County, and he asked that we consider paying 100% of her salary out of the Hardin County budget.
Okay, and if we do that, then does she get anything from Tyler County?
She does, and from what I understand from Judge Blanchett, they will be budgeting to continue to pay the percentage that the same percentage that they're paying now.
And they'll pay that to Hardin County, or they pay her direct?
They pay her directly.
Well, let me understand this, then she's gonna receive two salaries, one from Hardin County and one from,
I would think that if we were to agree to pay 100% of her salary and we notified Tyler County we were doing that, then they would probably discontinue paying the portion that they pay. But I have not talked to Judge Blanchett myself.
well, I'm trying to figure out if they're now paying a percentage, and we've gone through this several times.
Okay.
In prior years, you weren't here, but I know Judge Caraway had several conversations with Judge Blanchett. If they're going to make a contribution, then it's my feelings it should be and if Hardin County is gonna pay 100% of her salary, then the contribution should come to Hardin County. Otherwise, she's gonna be making two salaries,
Right.
and I
There
assume.
would have to be some adjustment made if we were to agree to pay the 100%.
Okay, well, this is what not,
I mean, I would, that's what I would expect anyway.
yeah, I mean, for simplicity, I can see that if Hardin County paid her salary, you know, benefit calculations and everything else, that it would probably work better. With the agreement that the Tyler County contribution is coming to Hardin County. And that's just my thought on such.
But just correct me if I'm wrong, currently they actually pay salary
That's
to
correct.
her,
That
directly
is
to
correct.
the
Looks like
coordinator.
7,500.
Yes, sir.
And she's entitled to the benefits Tyler County pays, which is different than our benefits.
Okay, yeah.
on
And
that-
that's the
on
reason
that
for this
portion.
request is,
Yeah,
is
okay.
our benefit package is better. and-
Okay.
And she would like to take advantage of that, and I don't blame
And,
her.
and I can understand that. I
Mhm.
certainly understand that.
Well, then let me back that up and say Judge Stover would like to take advantage of that for his employee.
Well, I think it's only fair. I mean,
Yes,
It's not her fault that, you know, Hardin County and Tyler County are, you know, together on this court.
I guess the only thing, is there any type of state statute? I didn't think about this till just now, but is there any kind of state statute that created that court that would mandate what they're to have?
I can't answer that.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't know the answer.
Judge Stover has stated that she works full-time here
Right,
and not in Tyler County.
right, but what I'm wondering is that a local decision that they've decided out of convenience, which is good? I know some legislatures created certain courts, and so I just wondered was thinking out loud, if we're mandated by the legislature. If that position was created where we'll be overstepping our boundaries.
Okay, check.
So that would be my concern. But I agree with the request, I mean.
I think that if we could, I'm kind of thinking on the same lines as Commissioner Pelt, that if we were to increase the pay to be 100%, that we would want Tyler County to send the 75-72 directly to Hardin County.
Yeah.
So that the dollar amount doesn't actually change, our benefits would go up, I would think, a little bit, our retirement and,
That's
Taxes.
negligible.
yes, sir.
That's not great.
So what's the consensus of the court on this? Would you like me to explore this further and have an answer at the next meeting?
I think so. For me, exactly what you said. If they'll pay Hardin County the 7,500, and then we'll do 100%.
I agree.
And also to make sure it's within legal bounds.
Yeah.
Between Angela and Debbie and I, we can figure out make sure that there's no, that we wouldn't be violating any statute by doing so. Anything further on,
You ask him about his telephone?
I did not. No, sir. Would you like me to do that?
Yeah. Are you looking, you see what I'm saying?
I do.
What about that second admin district? What is that?
Angela, can you answer that?
Where are you referring to?
It's
Right.
item number 400 on
400.
the, it'll be on the first page of the budget.
No, sir, I do not know.
And just, when you have some of those that have zeros, just wonder if they're necessary. Or if he's not using them anymore.
I wonder if that's is that for when we have a visiting judge?
Now, there's a line item for that, I think.
Right, I think it's in his, in the court
Yeah, that side.
jury budget.
Okay. Yeah, visiting judge.
There is a line item that I actually increased in the 88th Court jury budget, and we'll go back to this other one, but I wanted to bring this up before
And then
I forget. It's the line item for the pauper attorney adult felony. We have some expenditures in that line item, but there's no money budgeted there, so I set that at 75,000 to cover that. But I reduced some other line items. Overall, it's a total gain of, around just under 11,000 for the whole budget under the, 88th court. But as you'll see later in the, I think it's the, CPS court, we were able to reduce some of that to offset it. The CPS jury fund. Let's go back to Commissioner Roberts' first question about the telephone. 420. I don't see why we couldn't reduce that down to, say around $250. And I will discuss that with Judge Stover as well before we finalize it, but is everyone in agreement on that?
Yes, it looks like nothing's spent out of it.
You wanna go a little less? You make it 100?
I'd say, I don't know why he needs it if it's, if that's all the expenses there are.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we let you work that out with him?
Okay.
And the other question I had was on 570.
Okay.
What is that?
He told me that he's, they're buying, some computers,
Okay.
and I believe that's the line item that's coming out of. Does that sound right, Angela?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I think they need to buy some more computers next year. So he asked me not to reduce, his computer line item, and I believe that's it.
Okay.
He also asked that we not change the law book line item because we'll be purchasing law books after the new ones come out at the end of this year. Is there any further discussion or questions on the 88th court? All right, we'll move on to the 356th. Again, we have a letter from Judge Thomas asking to keep his budget the same. If you'll look at the 356 jury budget, there was a line item increased here, and again, it's the line item 419, the pauper attorney adult felony. It was increased by 25,000. The expenditures at halfway through the year were at roughly 55%, which was 95,771.
I was thinking that the legislature, I don't know where they signed the bill or not, where the governor signed it, the legislature passed it, where they would pick up more of the indigent attorney fees. Do we know anything about that?
I don't know, sir. That'd be nice, because I think we're spending roughly 400,000 a year right now.
I don't know where he signed the bill or not, but the legislature did pass a bill picking up more of indigent. Might check that out.
I will. Is there any questions regarding Judge 356 court?
And same questions on line item 400, he has the same thing, second admin district, you know, and wasn't used. And then the telephone, his telephone.
It looks like he would probably need around 325 to 350 in his telephone budget, based on the usage at halfway through the year.
Here again, can you discuss
I
that?
can, yes, sir. I'll be glad to. Are there any other questions? All right. Move on to item C, the auditor's budget.
Oh, here's where we balance our budget.
Yes, sir. That's what she said.
I tried. Okay, last year you'll notice that we cut $3,000 out of our budget. We cut our travel by $2,000 and our telephone by $1,000. And this year we propose to cut our telephone an additional $50. Our equipment expense, we will reduce that to, if you add the equipment expense and the computer expense together, that's $3,200, so that's a decrease as of $645. I would like to separate out my computer expense from my equipment expense. That's a maintenance monthly agreement that I have for our computers in our office. And then we will reduce our law books by $500, and so that's a total cut of $1,595 this year out of our budget. Also, cut out the printing, which was $400.
And if I remember right, you told me in the past 3 years, y'all haven't spent that $400 at all,
correct.
right? Okay. Any questions? Moving right along, we'll go to Road and Bridge. The first worksheet for Road and Bridge that we have is the general Road and Bridge. And that's where apparently all of the salaries are located for the elected officials. There is one line item on here for right-of-way. And I was gonna ask Commissioner Pelt, do you know what that's for?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And we haven't used it since I've been on the court 19 years, but we normally have had a request from TxDOT that we not totally remove it in case they wanted to do some right-of-way expansions.
Okay.
And like on 69 and stuff, that if we don't have anything in there, they won't even consider, you know, work in our county.
Okay,
That's the only reason it's in there.
all right. That was the only question I have. Does anyone have any other questions on the general? If not, we'll move to Road and Bridge 1.
Judge, I'm not gonna ask for, any revenue increases in my budget. I would like to make a note for, just for the record, I took $150,000 cut last year. And eventually, I'm gonna have to have some of that back, but because the previous, commissioner left so much in rollover, I'm comfortable, with my budget the way it is. And that,
Do you have a copy of
on the expenses, portion of it where it shows over $1 million, that's included the rollover, or I'm sorry, the carryover from, previous years, so that's why that's so high. like I said, my actual budget went down 150,000, and I just got through doing 3 road jobs, so I'm gonna be zeroed out on everything pretty much before the end of the year, but because I do have that cushion on my carryover, I feel comfortable. I did make an attachment there. I wanna make some, salary adjustments out of existing money that's already there, and the indication is, on that attachment. Also moving, $5,000 into my equipment expense line item, just moving money around, not asking for any additional revenue, but that's all that I have on that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Are there any questions from any of the other members, or any discussion? All right, we'll move on to Road and Bridge 2.
The only thing that, the changes I'm asking for is, there's a small discrepancy earlier in the year on the amount that I was cut. I was under the impression I was cut 100,000, in the budget it was 125,000. So I'm trying to make sure I'm at that 559, 468 instead of the 534. And that's material and supplies. On utilities, we're about 4,200 a year, so I'm asking to make sure that we can cover that. I have a pickup I need to buy. I've got one pickup with 170,000 miles on it. I have $20,000 currently in the budget. I'm asking for another 10,000. I've got an estimate from Ken for about 28,000 on a pickup, and so I'm asking for an additional 10,000 there. And on equipment notes, because the way the budget was done last year, and we just arbitrarily cut our budgets, and the way Larry kept the books the last time, we weren't able to go back and make sure there was enough in there to pay my tractor note. I think I have 2 more years on that. Is that right, Angela?
I think so.
And so what I'm asking for is additional 13,289 on the equipment notes. And I'm asking for that 13,000, that 10,000, that extra 700 be supplied, since we took such big cuts last year. And I just would like to second what Commissioner Cooper said, is that we've been cut so much, I am gonna need some of that money back. And,
I've done if you don't mind me
Yeah.
jumping in, I've done a little research, even past, the years before I was here, and looking at your personal budget in precinct 2 over the years, you took a pretty good, and I know Mr. Peltz gave us some numbers on his too.
Yeah.
Road and Bridge has taken a lot of cuts.
200,000,
Yeah.
just in me, in 3 years, 4 years. Over 200,000 just on materials and supplies. That's a lot of money.
Commissioner Pelt, I think a few months ago you had transferred 25,000 in the Road and Bridge 2. That was a permanent transfer, is that correct?
It was last year when we got down to balancing the budget. There were a lot of figures being thrown around, and inadvertently, 25,000 was taken out of Chris's. That should have been taken out of mine.
Okay.
And so this was correcting that error.
So that
That's what
takes
that
care of
was.
a little over half of your
Right.
increase.
That 48 included that 25. I just wanted to make sure for the record that I was gonna be at 559 versus the 534. And then on these makeups, I feel like the court should help me supply the money for the equipment note, since that money was lost last year. And really, because the way Larry used to keep the books, that we weren't allowed to go in. It was chore, just if we wanted to correct those numbers, they kept saying do the overall, so we just let it ride, so.
I definitely think that if your vehicle or your equipment notes are 35,184, that should be that line item should reflect 35,184. That's no question there.
And and if I don't get a new truck, then we'll just have a lot of repair bills on probably the one we got, so. We had to pay a shop, or I can get a new vehicle, but. And that's for the precinct.
I think we should budget it, and then, if you're able to get by without it this year, great. If not,
yeah.
it's there so you can replace it. That's
Absolutely.
kinda my thoughts on that.
But that's all I really got, and then the phone, I just wanted to make sure that, we just knew it's the office, the internet, the fax number, and then the sales, and then, on my, copier, Gina and I was talking, and I think we're taking that out of materials and supplies, and so I would need to, make sure that office machine rentals, and if I'll just double check that and make sure what we're doing, but other than that, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Can I jump back in 1 second, Judge?
Oh, I do have to talk about employees, but go ahead, go ahead.
I also said earlier in our budget workshops that I'd be giving my cell phone up, and I will be doing that. I don't have a monetary figure of what that is. It's gonna be low, but I will be giving my cell phone up.
Okay.
I'll get with, Angela on that.
On the employees, we've got some retirements going on, and so, I'm looking at moving, if you'll look, there's 4 on the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. The person, on the proposed changes, the first one would be moving into, a spot where I have a retirement, and then, number 2 would be moving into that number 1 spot, and that's actually gonna be a reduction in that position. It's a heavy equipment operator, and so that's gonna be saving, and so the combined savings of 1 and 2, I would like to reclassify 3 and 4 from light equipment operators to heavy equipment operators, because they're also maintaining their jailer's license. And I've got 2 doing that, and they run heavy equipment and, what have you, and it's not adding any new money to my budget, and it's actually, the money I'm saving on 1 and 2, it helps me reclassify 3 and 4.
And you still save some money, don't you?
Still saving some money, yeah. I'm still not spending everything that was budgeted.
I think it's around a little over $3,000, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, any further discussion on Road and Bridge 2? So the overall increase is, what I'm showing, after you take the salaries out, would be a little over 20,000.
Correct. It maintaining that's gonna be,
Right.
yeah.
Any questions or further discussion? All right, we'll move to Road and Bridge 3.
Okay, you have a sheet, and I'm proposing on my budget that it would remain the same as last year with that carryover taken out. I take it out of all of mine because that's not what's shown in the 2015 budget. It's less carryover, which is $1,182,232, and I show that I transferred this year that 25,000 to Chris, which I'm putting it back into my materials for the next year. I've made a few adjustments to line items, like on expenses, adding 20,000 in. I'm taking the 20,000 out of equipment rentals and zeroing that line item out. Utilities increasing at $2,000. And I took my notes and put it into equipment purchase because a lot of the carryover, the way we started handling our budgets, the commissioners did in, I don't remember what year, but way back there, we would use carryover for 2 purposes. One, for equipment, so you could buy it cash rather than financing it. And then the second thing is so that you could gather up enough roads to do asphalting and have enough money to do it. Because if you do it on a 1-year basis, the most that I could get out of my budget would be 1 mile. And like, and you go into a subdivision like Pinewood, where I need to do maybe 3 miles, or like Keith Road, which is 3 miles, then it makes sense to carry the money over. And I don't know, sometime back that was, Larry gave us an opinion that was legal, so the court established that, and that's the reason but the carryover is out of a prior budget. It's not something like, you look at my budget, I didn't have a 1586 budget, I had that much money, but that was money from the past that had been saved to do other things. Now, I can second everything Nevin said and add to it. And I furnished the commissioners with a comparison. I went back to 2008 I just picked that point. During that period of time, the road and bridge budget has been cut consistently in order to balance the total county budget. And I just drew a comparison there between the two departments in the county that has large funds. In prior years, this court has each year said and done what we've done this year, not quite to the extent, and I commend Judge McDaniel for the thoroughness in the budget hearings that we've had this year, but each year we have looked. And over the years, out of all the departments, county clerks, tax assessors, whatever, we've pretty well taken out everything that could be taken out, and they still function as the departments that they're set up to function as. And so then when you get down to it, in order to balance the budget, Road and Bridge has been the one to make the cuts, because it was either make the cuts in Road and Bridge or increase the tax rate. And so commissioners have, and we have taken cuts. I give the example in mine, and Nubbin's got his, and I know that the other commissioners do too. But since 2008, I've taken $330,000 worth of cuts. And hope not to take any this year, but we haven't put the budget together yet. So, but when you look at that second page, you can see where the money's going, and it continues to grow, and we continue to have to fund all these functions. But, and I know the court is not fully maybe aware, and the public is not aware of what's happened to the county in the last 6 years. The comptroller's office changed the formula on oil and gas appraisals about 5 years ago, which before they changed it back, cost this county about $2 million. And of course, when they changed it back, the horse was out of the barn. The oil and gas that was created by that 3D seismic drilling boom had been depleted, and that was gone forever. And then starting 6 years ago, when the Federal Reserve cut the discount rate from up around 4-5% down to essentially zero, we were earning about $500,000 plus or minus on our tax deposits that we would deposit $13 million or so that we would deposit in January. And during the year, we'd earn about $500,000 that helped this budget out. Well, I haven't gone back and looked for the full 6 years, but it's less than $50,000 or so a year now. So due to what the Federal Reserve did to us, we've lost about $3 million of interest that so those two together, in the last 6 or 7 years, we've lost $5 million. This county has in tax revenue, that if those two things hadn't happened, the comptroller's office changing the appraisal on oil and gas and the feds dropping the discount rate to zero, then we wouldn't even be talking about these problems today. And I think it's important that the public understand why we're in the situation that we're in today. But be that as it may, I'm like Nubbin. Each year in June, the commissioners have to file what's called a road and bridge report that basically by state law says you have to determine how much money it would take to put the roads in your precinct in good condition. This year in my precinct it was $5 million.
Mine was 10 million.
It's 10 million, all of us. But the point is that we have to give this report. And each year what's happening in road and bridge is the roads are getting in poorer shape all the time. And I'll take in my precinct, and I know Chris has more, and Nubbin has lots, and Alvin has nearly all of his are asphalt roads. TxDOT, when I first came into this office and went to this continued education school, they recommend that you plan to overlay an asphalt road at least every 20 years. That's the maximum life. The state tries to do it about every 10 and sometimes more frequent, depending on the traffic. And then within 2 years after you do an overlay, that you come back and do a seal coat to preserve that overlay. Well, in 19 years, I've never been able to do a seal coat, and I don't know of many commissioners that are doing seal coats, because that'll cost about a quarter of what an asphalt overlay will be. I have 99 miles of asphalt road. Based upon the state's formula, then I need to be overlaying 4.5 miles of road every year in order just to keep up, forgetting about the seal coats. 4.5 miles would cost me $450,000. That's my whole material budget for everything that I do. So I would do 4.5 miles, and the other 180 miles of road would get nothing. So we're getting further behind each year on our road system. And I don't know about the other commissioners, but I have an idea their situation is very similar to mine. You can tell it by the number of complaints. The complaints are going up, 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 up. Some of these people are getting almost hostile about their road conditions. And yet we're continuing to cut the road and bridge. And probably will continue because this court has to set a tax rate. And if you get too high on the tax rate, you won't be sitting on this court. So it's a catch-22 for a commissioner's court. But I have cut my budget. Right now, I have a grader that is 10 years old. My grade all is 12 years old. I've got trucks that are 25 years old. Now, it doesn't do any good to have new equipment if I don't have any money for materials. And so this is the reason, but this is the reason that I carried over, is to, not it's a big surplus in my budget, money that I don't need, but because I have tried to accumulate funds to pay cash for these different pieces of equipment. Today, financing is very cheap, but there's been periods of time it was 5 or 6%. And I think this court has done a great job under the circumstances of balancing the budget. We have to send a balanced budget by the law, but has done a great job of managing the funds of this county. But we're getting down to the point now that where it's not just becoming difficult, it's becoming counterproductive because a lot of these roads now are starting to tear up. In fact, in my precinct, I'm taking asphalt roads back to oil roads because I will never be able to afford to overlay these roads. Now, if a person has gotten used to driving on an asphalt road, it doesn't make them very happy to drive on an oil road. And so where this court is going with this budget, I don't know, but I have some ideas. And like Nubbin said a while ago, what cuts we make this year, I would like for it to be understood that when things ease up, if they ease up, and what we have to realize is that the losses we took in oil prices this year only were reflected in maybe 6 months of last year, and maybe just 3 months. And those were offset by new construction in the county. But next year, the new construction will probably be about the same, but from all the forecasts, we'll be living with a full 12 months of oil cuts next year. So the problem that we face today will be as severe or more severe next year. And so we have to keep all that in mind. But that's all I have. I've said too much, but that's where we are.
It's always very educational.
That's where we are. Well, I
I
think
appreciate
there needs to be some education as to what's happening with the roads in this county.
Yes, sir. Well, based on, if I followed everything correctly, you've got enough money to overlay 3 miles of road, but you need to be overlaying a minimum of 4.5 miles of road.
Yeah, and that
So it
was
don't take
just,
very long to figure out.
well, and it takes 3 years to build that up.
Right.
You know, I can't do that every year. But that's the reason I've accumulated. But at 1 mile a year, which is just about what I can do, then it will take 45 years to do what the state says you need to do on roads. Now, most of these people won't be living on these roads 45 years, and I won't be worried about it. But that's where we are. And that's not something that the public even wants to hear when they get a call that their road's falling apart.
No, sir. You are correct.
So I hope I've said enough, you'll leave my budget where it is.
Well,
Temporarily.
yes, sir, of course. Does anybody have any further questions or discussion on Road and Bridge 3?
No, I just, I think it's irresponsible to cut our budget. I disagreed with it last year. I will never agree to cut Road and Bridge again. I think the monies have to be made up, and I know that we're in a bind. But not only do we have to have a conservative government, you have to be responsible for the people. And my concern is we're moving into the area of irresponsibility in taking care of the roads. Because, there were options on the table last year, and we chose the worst option, which is to cut Road and Bridge to pay for other things. And so I will not vote to be cutting any Road and Bridge budget. And I think it's irresponsible, and that's just me on the record.
I need to go on the record too. I agree with what Commissioner Pelt and Commissioner Kirkendall said. I don't know if I would go so far as saying that I wouldn't vote for another cut in Road and Bridge or not. But my perspective on the situation is there are other areas where we need to cut, and before I start messing in somebody else's backyard, I'm gonna take care of mine first. So we've shown that we have cut Road and Bridge, and now it's
Absolutely.
time to do things, so that's just mine. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Roberts, before we begin with Road and Bridge 4, I have a message from Judge Minton that she needs to leave. And she has an item that she'd like to address the court with. If everybody's okay with that, I'd like to skip to item I for just a few minutes.
I wanted to be next.
Well, you can be next after Judge Minton if that's all right.
And I'm sorry, Judge Hall got called out on the inquest, and I need to hold court for him at 10 o'clock.
Towards the back of your packet, there's a printout from Judge Minton, and I think she's
And I
fixing to
think
hand us a fresher
you
one.
one that shows the actual savings.
Thank you.
Just to update the court, Judge Minton has had a change in personnel since she came before the court on her budget workshop. So she has some changes that she'd like to propose, and I asked her to go ahead and be here today, and we cover that under item I. So we're gonna move to item I momentarily, and then we'll go back to item C. Judge?
What I'm asking is to give up my 28-hour part-time court clerk and go to a relief, 160 or 132, whatever it is Brandy would have for the next budget in those hours. And the schedule shows that the current part-time is the 23,000. Let me back up. And in doing that, I would like to do new software at the office, net data, the same software that the financial side is using currently. So my current part-time with benefits and everything's 23,480. My current software, which does come out of technology fund and not out of my actual budget, is the 2710 for a total of 26,190. The new net data software would be 4417. A relief clerk at 160 hours with the FICA and all of that figured in is 2580 for a total of 6997. That's a difference of 19,193 savings there. I've already cut telephone by 600 and travel by 1450 for an additional 2,050. The 19 and the 2050 comes up to roughly 21 something. But there is a one-time setup fee of $8,000 for net data. So it would actually be a decrease in my budget by $13,243.
Judge Minton, on the, something I didn't think about yesterday when you talked to me about this, the current software is 2710,
Yes, sir.
but it comes out of the, technology fund.
fund.
So is it included in your $13,000 figure of your cut?
Yes.
So it really wouldn't be because it's not in your budget.
Not
that
my
right?
budget, but countywide budget would be a
Right.
savings of 13,000. If we put a line item into my own budget for software. So we'll call it a countywide budget cut of 13,000.
Okay.
Chin-
The, other question I have is, they have a one-time setup fee, which is the licensing, installation and
Yes,
all
sir.
that of $8,000. The 4417 would not come into play until the next budget year, is that correct?
That is my understanding, once installation is completed in the first year.
So the 8,000 doesn't cover the 4417?
Correct.
Okay.
So that 8,000 is a one-time setup fee. And the next,
Let's just say they install it in April of next year. That 4,400 is gonna hit in April of next year as well, in this
Yes.
budget?
Yes.
In the 16 budget?
yes.
Is that's not how they did the financial
They
software, is it?
prorated ours.
And,
They
you know,
started in January, and so they prorated it for that first year, and then.
Well, then it would probably be also, I would guess.
that's not a question I asked, so I don't have the correct answer for you.
It's an annual cost, so I would think that they would prorate it for the months that you have, but we need to check on it to make sure.
For the past year and a half or so, Dale Williford and I and several others have been working on trying to get all of the, everyone who's in the criminal justice business here at the courthouse and, no, I guess that would include everybody that's in the criminal justice business except for the sheriff to be on the same software package. Of course, it's a very large expense and we don't have the money for it. But, Net Data is the company that, so far has been one of the top that we've looked at, and no decision's been made. Like I said, we don't have the money to do it now anyway, but if Judge Minton were allowed to do this, this would at least give us a test of how good the software would be for the judicial system, and bad thing is I guess you're locked into it for 5 years if it's not good, or if you don't like it, is that right? Is that a 5-year contract that you would have to sign to?
I think that's what they, or the price is locked in for 5 years. I do not recall seeing that it was a 5-year contract, just that we were locked into the 4417 for 5 years.
Well, I know on the financial side, it was a 5-year, wasn't it didn't we have to have a 5-year guaranteeing we'd be with them for 5 years at those prices?
I believe there is a stipulation that you can get out of the contract, but the prices are
There has
locked
to
in.
be.
Mhm.
State law, you cannot sign a contract except a bond issue to where you're obligated, can't get out. So, yeah, there has to be an out for the county.
Okay.
One of the additional things that the software will allow for is scofflaw. And what that is anybody that's not paying their traffic citations, we can enter them into the state scofflaw, which means they cannot renew their vehicle registration. Currently, we have Omni, which holds their driver's license if they don't pay their traffic citations. So this is another avenue to hold something so they'll pay their traffic citations.
And you're already dealing with that with some other counties, I believe, is that right? Okay. Any experience or anything on how that's working? I know people will drive without their license, but, when their stickers on their windshield is out, well, that's a little easier to, yes, ma'am. Okay. So that sounds good as well, I think, in my opinion.
Well, I would go for dismissing.
I would too.
I would too.
Sounds like you got the thumbs up for now, anyway.
Thank you. I
you.
appreciate y'all.
Yes, ma'am, thank
Sorry I
you.
had to cut in line.
That's okay, thank you. All right, we'll go back to item D, Road and Bridge number 4. Commissioner Roberts?
Being the new guy on the court, and this is my first budget, when I came into this, the previous commissioner, like the rest of y'all, had lowered his budget considerably. As you can see, I'm asking for $230,000 in materials and supplies. That's because I need to overlay a major road, which is Mitchell Road in Lumberton, to start with. It's in really bad shape, and the previous commissioner also informed me that I would be needing to do that. So I bumped that up basically $80,000, and that's what it's gonna cost to do Mitchell Road. It's 0.8 of a mile. Other than that, I removed, and I got with Angela back when, I had two line items. One was this office machine maintenance, LS, and then there was office machine rentals. And, we talked about combining those, I don't know if you remember, so that's what I've done. I guess I did it right, I moved them in the right, is that the ones you wanted to move them to? Or
Yeah,
the
that
other?
would be fine.
That's fine. So I basically combined those two, and that's gonna cover my copying machine and all that, which will, pretty much use that total. Let's see, I think I lowered one somewhere, but pretty much, my budget's bare bones. I've been trying to operate as efficiently as I can, doing what I can with the money that I was given. This budget that you're seeing in front of you is up to date through the end of June, so, unlike y'all had done them through April, mine's through June. That's why the figures are higher. I need more money in my materials so I can do that road. Other than that, I'm pretty much set where I was. The other thing that I didn't look at, other than just strictly within the salaries, I may wanna move some of my salaries around, but it won't change the amount of my salaries. I can operate, I think, within the salaries and wages as they are, and just move some of my personnel. But I didn't know we were addressing that at this time, so.
How much of an increase you asking for?
On roads and materials and supplies, it's 230, from.
No, your total overall budget from.
Oh, total overall is, of course,
Like around 52.
yeah, it's up around 52. And that includes my carryover, which was 39.
Well, I just reiterate what we said, I think we take too many cuts.
Yeah, I agree. And I started, like I said, when I started looking at mine, I was cut to the bone to begin with. And, I've been doing what I can with what I've got, but I need more to operate. And I understand y'all saying the same thing.
53, is that what the amount is?
Yeah.
I have talked to the auditor about this, and I'd like to know how the commissioners feel about the line item that's labeled prior year surplus carryover. Could we call that in each road and bridge precinct, for instance, in Road and Bridge 4, we would call it RMB 4 contingency? And do the same for each road and
Yeah, I
bridge?
think that'd be a better term
that's-
for it,
That's what
because
it is.
it leads the public to believe that we've got a big surplus of funds,
Yes, sir.
when I've already explained the reason that we established the carryover was so that we could handle big ticket items. We could accumulate funds, because there's not enough funds in 1 year to do it. And that's like Alvin's talking here on Mitchell Road. I face that every year. But I can't get enough money in 1 year to do it. I have to carry over in order to do it. And that's the reason that we do need the carryover situation.
And in my case, I didn't have much carryover to begin with. So.
Well, how much, Angela, you told me yesterday that you knew about where we were as far as the cuts that we've made so far in the previous budget workshops. You said you thought it was around 70. That sound right?
Not including the sheriff's department is 72,000 is the total.
And I think he's got an increase of maybe around, wasn't it 43 and then he cut 42? Does that sound right, Commissioner Pelt? So he probably has about a $1,200, I think, add, maybe,
Somewhere's right in there.
somewhere around there.
Judge,
Based
are
on
we-
what we've done so far today, we have wiped out our cuts that we've made so far
That
through
does
the
not
budget
include the sheriff.
workshops.
Does that include, Missy's?
Yes, sir.
What is this?
That's the $72,000 cuts as
Oh,
of
okay.
today without the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department's not listed there.
Judge, and I assume we are, after we go through all this today, we're gonna get around to talking about, where we really are on our budget process, and, how putting all this thing together, because right now, we don't have enough cuts for,
No, sir.
I mean, there's nothing, we're talking about tossing pennies around.
Well, like I said, if she's got around 70,000 is what we've cut so
Yeah.
far, and we've added,
But are we gonna be in a position to talk about where the contingency fund would be, how we're gonna handle balancing the budget?
I
How
would
see we still got the county judge coming up, so,
Yes, sir, maybe we can do it there.
but, assuming that when we finish this, we don't have the funds. Are we in a position today to look at, are we planning to leave this court today with a plan of how we're gonna balance this budget?
Well, we have a week left to do it, so we've got to get really close today.
Yeah, okay, well, that's what I thought. Okay.
Because I think when we file the proposed budget next Friday at 5 o'clock is the deadline.
Oh, yeah.
When we file that, it needs to be as close as possible to what the final budget will be at the end of September.
Yeah, well, I think when we leave here today, we've got to have it pretty well nailed down so she can put it in written form. So we can come back next week and look at it and say, this is a proposed budget.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well then, I'm gonna, I think we need to go ahead and go through the rest of it. And then
Yes, sir.
we'll see.
Can I go back a minute on Alvin?
Yes, sir.
Y'all said 53,000 increase, and he's asking for 80,000 increase. I'm losing something here.
Well, he
39.
reduced a couple of line items, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at his bottom dollars, the final totals. He had, budgeted 661, 723, and he's proposing 714, 847.
That includes my carryover of 39,000. If you take the 39,000 out, then you're gonna get the 80,000.
And along
Well,
the
the
line,
39 needs to be added back in over here, right?
It's not added in over on the other side, so if
But
you add
it's
it
not a
in.
budgeted item.
Yeah, it's not a
Commissioner Pelt
budget, right,
had
Gotcha.
mentioned that earlier, that should not be in a budgeted item. It
that's
should
why
be
it's not
taken
over
out.
there.
Okay.
and this is with the judge's suggestion about putting it in a road and bridge contingency. As far as the budget is concerned, it will be left out of future budget because it's not listed in our proposed budget that we file with the
That's
public.
correct, it should not
And
be there.
all it does is really
Skew
kind
things really
of skew things to where you can't sink your teeth into what you really ought to be
That
discussing.
is
All right,
correct.
I got a question on that. Say you have a contingency of 100,000 and you spend 100,000, is that gonna come out of your expenses or are we gonna show that coming out of contingency? Like if we do a R&B contingency two, R&B two contingency, let's say I buy a piece of equipment for 100,000, is that still gonna come out of my budget as 100,000 or are we gonna show that coming out of contingency?
Well, what he's proposing is a name change only. It will continue to be the same way that it has been in the past. Once your budget is over this fiscal year and the audit is complete, we will look at your budget to see what you have left in your budget, and that is the amount that will be included in the next year. Now, as far as the line item that it comes out, we would like to see it come out of the line item that it needs to come out of, so you'll know exactly what you spent on your equipment and your materials, and we'll just move it from that line item to transfer it down to where you
From the
cover it.
contingency line item to the line item in your budget.
Excellent, okay, that's good, thank you.
But, let me finish on mine, and just real quick, and I just thought about it, because what we're saying, on a couple of my line items, I'm definitely in the overage, but that was because there was not enough money left in them, and used to, like, y'all were talking with Larry, just was the bottom line figure. I've got those adjusted out on the other side now. On my miscellaneous, of course, that was when we took office, we had some things to do, so that pushed that over. But it remains the same. I don't need that much money in my miscellaneous. And then, my telephone, every year has been way over, and that's just crazy. So, I've got that one fixed. But everything else is lined out right. I got the travel equal to y'all's, and so, everything should be right on that far side where it was on the other.
You don't think you could use some of the equipment note money? Cause you,
What I was just looking at.
Are you talking about that equipment notes? That's for, the grade
Grade
aisle.
aisle, huh?
It's for that grade aisle.
so you're fixing to have a big hit on it, or you
Yes.
gonna spend all of it?
It's a regular, yeah.
What about, equipment purchase? You're going up from 10 to 20. And you've only used, 3.
Purchase. Can't remember why I did that. I'm not looking to purchase any equipment. I'm gonna make do with what I have unless
As
something
far as the
just
equipment
breaks
notes,
down.
just like Chris said, whatever, or
I was
the others
thinking
too, whatever
maybe-
we're out, is
You know,
what I think it needs to be budgeted
Right.
as.
Yeah,
Your equipment note, is it an annual note or a monthly note?
is it a quarterly? I don't even,
Probably
yeah.
annual.
it's
Okay.
annual or something. I know all of a sudden it appears on the deal.
It's annual, I imagine. Must be what piece of equipment was it?
Right on,
Probably about 4 notes, huh?
yeah. I think that's what they're doing.
270,000.
Yeah, 5 notes, 6 notes, yeah.
But, yeah, on the equipment notes, say, on equipment purchase, I don't know, I'd have to think about why I did that.
Where are you gonna buy a new truck for precinct 2?
I would love to trade one of mine in right now, but,
Right.
like I said, I'm gonna try to make do with the equipment that I have.
Well, the amount of the increase, I don't know what your secretary had put in here, but it might be that, lawnmower we was talking about. Wasn't you gonna get
That zero turn, but I don't know if how we're gonna do that, if that's gonna come out. Of course, we hadn't got back to the park. The park got eliminated, but, we now have a zero turn radius lawnmower that's costing us more to operate than it would be to replace it. It breaks down like every month. Of course, you only use it a few months out of the year, but still,
Yeah.
it should have been bought as a industrial type instead of a homeowner type lawnmower, and it wasn't.
So the actual increase here is not 53.
It'd be less than that before.
It'd be more.
More?
Yeah, cause you gotta take the
Around
39
97.
out.
You'd have to add the 39 to this, or subtract it from here. Either way, the difference grows by 39,051.
What before the 39, it was 31?
Let's look
Six.
in the book. and see
Yeah,
what
look
your-
back in the book real
See
quick.
what your actual,
Yeah.
that's very confusing when and I know we have to put it in order to expend it. But, yeah, your bottom line is 622, 672.
Yeah,
And the 714 is not gonna be correct because that would be almost $100,000 increase. And, that's,
yeah,
Well, it is if you add
the other stuff
the
in.
equipment purchase went up 10,000, and then the telephone went up a little bit. Once you add all of those to that 80, it is a little over 90.
That might have been a mismarking on my part.
That's a mismarking.
Yeah, it could be. The equipment purchase can stay at 10 for right now, so you could take 10 back off of it. So that would lower that to 704.
But his base budget is $622,672.
Right.
And that's the figure we'll be working with. 'Cause that 39,000 is committed, I think, isn't it?
Yes, but on our other deal, it's gonna be committed. It's gone.
Yeah.
That 39,000's
I
gone.
think it's gone. Okay.
See, I'm trying to go back through. I think that was just a mismark on my part on the equipment purchase, cause I didn't intend to really buy anything. Other than, like Nubbin said, that lawnmower is about the only thing I may have to change out unless one of my vehicles really breaks down to the point I can't fix it.
That's gonna be a pretty large increase.
Yes, sir.
Well,
But that's what he told us it was.
Yeah.
He didn't.
It's for that road that I don't have a choice.
I think that's gonna be hard to maintain, Alvin, when we get to the final deal here today.
Once again, you're talking about a road that is highly
Yeah.
traveled. It's not like 1 or 2 cars every 2 minutes, it's 10 or 12 cars every minute. So it's a road that is in really dire need. I didn't even look, I've got another major road that is gonna have to be looked at, within the next year or two. So I'm just kinda stuck, and y'all know I am, that's,
You're gonna have to do a half a road at a time.
Well,
it's not even half a road.
I'm
stuck.
sure they've got the same problem, I've got one in a major subdivision, Pinewood, that's coming all to pieces. And, it's a mile, and I just don't have the funds for it. And
But see, that's all of my subdivisions are major.
yeah,
I don't have a minor subdivision.
well, that was a wrong term, but I'm talking about it's a subdivision that is the size of almost the city of Sour Lake. And yet it's got a street in it that's falling apart, and I don't have the money to fix it. And, you know, in order to hold my budget at what it was this year, I'm just gonna have to, I guess, listen to it. But,
See, y'all, just so y'all know, on my carryover, my contingency carryover, the 39,000, 9,000 of it was from, the lateral road and bridge, which
yeah,
comes, and then the 30,000 was carryover from
Is that-
an employee that wasn't there last year.
On, on your carryover, $39,000, 9,000 of that you have listed as lateral road fund?
That's in the carryover, right?
Well, that's a whole different.
that's a different fund.
Okay. I was thinking it was,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that your numbers that you put in there, 39, or did that come from here?
came from her.
Well, that's not included, your, lateral road.
Okay.
Lateral road is
So
separate
lateral
fund.
road's different,
Yeah.
So you should still have 90,
39,
yeah,
but that was all
Plus
just
that.
about from that salary,
yeah.
right?
What salary are you referring to?
The position that Bobby didn't fill last year.
In this budget alone?
Yeah, on the
That's
carryover.
your carryover.
Yeah, that was the carryover. I didn't have any carryover out of my materials or anything from last year, nothing. So that's, you know, and plus, hopefully, on my materials, I have one road that every time it floods, we're spending lots of money on materials to fix it. Y'all have some of the same on some of your rural roads. That's been my biggest deal, but it's also gone underwater like 4 times this year. And every time it does, I have to put material on it. I don't have a choice, and we're digging material out of the ditches to put back on it, so, you know, like I said, I've tried to operate as efficiently as I can. I've just had a lot of expense, up front on some things, but the only increase that I really needed was for that overlay. And I'm getting to the point, I don't have a choice on that road.
I think what you're saying, same thing, and I've been saying the same thing that, you know, what I'm saying. I've got a subdivision up in, Outlaw Bend, Big Figure Retreat, that I had roads that stayed 6 feet underwater in that Menard Creek this year.
Hey, we talked to a guy this week in school that is a commissioner in Polk County, and he said he appreciates everything you do and all that.
Yeah, all that material's left and probably went to Polk County.
So he said it flowed down to him.
But, they hadn't returned it. I might need to talk to him, but anyway, but everything is said just reiterates that, you know, it's getting tough for the road and bridge. It's been going on for 8 years or so now. Anyway, that's,
I sure don't disagree, but it's that way all the way across the board.
yeah.
Before we, are we through with road and bridge? Before we move on, I had asked Ms. Stevens to come this morning and talk about the effective tax rate. Was this a good time for you to do that?
It's wonderful.
Okay.
Okay, Angela and I visited this morning, in those certified values that Alex certified to the county.
Yes, ma'am.
He added in last year's rolling stock,
Yes, ma'am.
which should not have been there. Because, in my calculations then, I was adding rolling stock in twice.
Right.
So he is sending or bringing over a revised certified values, which actually, is going to help the county as far as the rate, the tax rate. But I have come up with
The tax rate calculations.
the tax rate calculations.
Can I ask Angela a question before we proceed? The worksheet you gave us earlier has 2, 839, 819, 850.
Mhm.
That does not include the rolling tax.
Correct, I
So
subtracted that
when you
2
add the
million.
12,
Mhm.
so this is correct.
It should be, whatever
So
he
what has he
presents,
done?
we will check.
Okay.
But when I visited with Alex yesterday, he told me he did that, so I deducted it from the appraised value that he gave us, and then added the 12 million rolling stock to that amount. And then I talked to Shirley, and that's when she talked to Alex. So he should be sending us the revised one, which should match what I gave you this morning.
You fixed it before you brought it this morning, and now Ms. Stevens is
Yes, I
fixing to
fixed
fix it on the tax rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, after finishing my calculations, I have come up with an adjusted taxable value of $2,444,962,382.
Can you give it to me again?
$2,444,962,382.
Million.
2,444,960, I'm sorry, well, 2,444,962,382.
Thank you.
And that gives me an effective rate of 57 cents, .5769.
Okay, effective tax rate of 57 cents. Well, that's what you've got.
Down
Is
at the
that
That's
bottom.
what you've plugged in, Mark.
Almost
Down at
58.
the bottom.
Point 5769.
Yes.
Point 5769.
He wasn't realizing that should not have been in there.
That's why our effective tax rate is off last year, I bet.
Exactly, because,
Did you calculate a rollback?
I did try to calculate a road back,
We're
That's
not,
why it's off. Again,
62 cents,
how much?
62 cents.
62.
So we're currently at 56, and the effective tax rate for
To raise the same amount of revenue.
for next year would be 57.
And that
Actually,
will
almost
raise
58.
the same amount of revenue as we had this year for 2014-15.
We should have asked you to, we should have stopped what we were doing when you walked in.
Yeah. So in order to raise the same amount of taxes as we raised last year, then our effective tax rate would be .5769.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, if that's the effective tax rate, and we're at 56, and we go to the effective tax rate,
You'll have to have all of your public hearings, because as far as, the state's concerned,
It's an
it
increase.
is an increase.
But even if,
Whereas it wouldn't be an
Publish
increase
it.
probably on our individual taxes.
Well, it's not increased collectively, but it's
No,
increased
sir.
individually.
And,
Yeah.
so go back to what you said, or maybe the judge said, that's why it was off last year. Was it off last year?
well, last year that happened, we had the $10 million rolling stock. I think it was already in our,
So every year we're coming in here for budget time, and somebody's finding a fault that we made last year, so whose fault was
Well,
this?
what it is, you had the issue with Amador,
Yeah,
and then Alex taking over, and there was some question about how
and then we
Amador
had
took care of his
Angela
business.
and,
well, I wasn't
Whatever
there,
his
so
name
you can't
was.
blame me.
well,
That's
what
all I
it
know.
was, see,
no, he comes in here and tells us we're doing something wrong, and all of a sudden we find $400,000 last year, you know? Makes us look bad in the newspaper, what it does,
It does, you're right.
and it's,
But
But
I
we
don't
can
think,
only-
as far as,
Hopefully all that's behind
if you're
us.
wanting to lay blame, I don't know how you, I mean, it's a collective,
well, these other
the
people.
buck stops here, so here's.
That's right,
here's
we're
where
the
the blame
elected
is.
officials,
Yeah.
so it stops right here.
Right. And it doesn't do any good to blame somebody that doesn't work here anymore or anything like that.
They're gone.
Thank you.
They're gone.
he's got the category certified.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's gotta,
And
But
then-
we,
go with
we,
effective
we
tax
do
rate.
feel that what we're working with right now is correct.
That is, yes, sir,
Okay.
because I've already made the adjustment.
That's the main thing that
To
it
the
is.
certified,
right.
that,
Okay.
and I think one thing here is that when they changed softwares, went to another, that's another discussion, then they weren't aware that that was being included in their values.
Well, I'm glad that it was caught now. And of course, I know everybody sitting up here wished it had been caught last year, but at least it's caught now and we can fix it.
And I did talk to the comptroller's office this morning and asked them, should that have been put in there as a certified value? And they said, no, because you haven't received anything from the state, so it should not have been included in his certified values. But that will be corrected.
Just for clarification, the worksheet that you provided this morning, which I just hid from myself, let me find it. The first figure on here, estimated net taxable value, $2,839,819,850, does not include the rolling stock.
That's correct.
So when you have the next line item of rolling stock, $12,698,912, that is the rolling stock for the next fiscal year.
That is correct.
All right,
You mind before we proceed, if we take a 5-minute break?
you don't? How about if we take a little short break?
Sounds good.
Okay.